Hello and welcome to another playbook. This one is on product thinking and problem solving. Two things which are very closely tied to each other, but definitely distinct also from each other, but the approach can be very similar. Now, there are a lot of frameworks, a lot of different ways in which we can think about products and we can think about problem solving. What I'm going to do here is try and sort of take you through the framework that I have used most often. And I've tried to articulate this at different times over my career over the last 5 6 years especially, but I think what I'm going to share here is probably the best articulation that I could find for this is something that I've used at work for solving product problems that I was facing. This has been my approach towards building new products and new features. But more importantly, I also found that quite recently, a couple of friends were going through their interviews. This is the approach that I gave them for solving product design and sort of product questions in a more thorough way, in a more sensible way. So, this is an approach that you can take pretty much for any kind of problem solving when it comes to products, both while actually building the products, but even answering questions in an interview scenario. So I hope it's helpful to all of you. So let's first dig a little deeper into what it means to be in the problem space versus the solution space, because that's at the core of this framework, this philosophy that I'm going to share with you. So I love this quote by Richard Feynman. I would rather have questions that can't be answered than have answers that can't be questioned. Now, I'm going to do a separate set of videos on why Richard Feynman is probably sort of the greatest source of knowledge for all product managers and why we should all sort of really, really drink from the font that is Richard Feynman, because he has such great insights into problem solving. But this specific thing right here is at the crux of why some people are better than others at problem solving and building better products. And it's because they spend more time in the problem space than the solution space. Now, this is very strange because you would think that all problem solving is about solutions. But what I'm trying to tell you is that no, solutions are what happens right at the end of this entire process. But pretty much your entire time is actually supposed to be spent in the problem space, thinking about the problem. The solutions are straightforward as long as you are able to formulate the problem in the right way. And this is what Feynman meant when he says that I would much rather have questions that can't be answered than have answers that can't be questioned, because there's a big problem which happens when we jump to answers too soon. Now, this also happens, what I call the smart people problem. Smart people have a lot of problems, but one of their biggest problem is that smart people love giving answers. Ask them a question and something happens inside. Their brains start firing and they start giving you one answer after the other. It's also because in our culture, as we grew up, and not just in India, but I think globally, I think we went through a lot of exams. So when you were given an examination paper and you were told, hey, you have 1 hour to answer these 10 questions, by default, your brain got hardwired into read question number one, answer question number one, read question number two, answer question number two. A lot of us didn't even read through the question paper first and try and figure out, okay, these 8 questions seem easy, let me answer them first, then I'll answer these other two, and sort of take 30 35 minutes to answer the first 8 questions which are easy, and then spend the last 20 25 minutes answering these two tough questions. A lot of us didn't even do that. But more importantly, none of us ever question, why am I sitting and answering this question paper? Why does this question paper exist? And I know these sound like weird philosophical things to ask when a question paper comes to you. But the fact is, real life is not like an examination center. Real life is not like an interview. And which is why I always say that interviews are such a terrible way of hiring product managers, because interviews ask you to think and come up with answers to questions on the spot. So what you are trying to do is you're being judged on your ability to think on the spot. Whereas in reality, product managers never really have to think in that way on the spot. When you're solving product problems, nobody wants you to build a solution right there and then. You take your time, you understand the problem space, you talk to people, you try and really understand what the problem is. Then you arrive at an answer. Then you work with a team of engineers and designers and actually solve that problem. Real product management favors slow thinking. So, classic Daniel Kahneman book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Thinking fast is not the way we solve problems. Thinking fast is the way we solve problems in exams and in interviews. But in reality, when we really build products, thinking slow, being thoughtful about things, really digging deep, going to the root of the problem is what helps us build better products. So, how do we fight against this instinct? There's a part of us which has been trained to be idea machines. Somebody poses, how do we solve retention in our product? Tuck, 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 tuck. You would knock off 8 ideas. And we seem to think that the smarter we are, the better we are at ideas, and that we should be rewarded for the fact that we come up with a lot of ideas. Now, this again is a smart people problem. And as you grow in your career, you'd realize it's not the people with the best ideas, it's not the people with the most ideas who win. And whatever definition of win you want to apply, who are successful, who build successful products, who create value for their teams, for themselves, for their families, and for their users. No, it'll be the person who comes up with one great idea, which comes after a whole lot of thinking and spending time in the problem space. So resist the urge to answer too quickly. Resist the urge to jump to answers and give a lot of ideas. Your value as a problem solver and a product manager does not come from your ability to generate ideas. It comes from your ability to solve the problem. And solving the problem requires just one solution, not a lot of solutions. So let's dig further, a little deeper into it. And I'm going to talk about one of my favorite Henry Ford stories. Now, this story could be apocryphal. It could not be true. And that's fine. It's still a great story. And that's the advantage of great stories. They teach us something very, very relevant and very, very important. So the story goes that, there's a very famous Henry Ford quote where he says, if I had asked people, they would have wanted faster horses. Now, the essential crux of what Henry Ford was saying was that, hey, when he was around and he was trying to build his cars, what was the problem? So when he went around and he asked people and he said, hey, we want to get from town A to town B, but the horse carriages are really slow. The horses are really slow. We have to continuously maintain horseshoes, and horseshoes break. The roads are terrible. The horse carriages are so uncomfortable. Right? Now, if that's the problem statement, what all could have Henry Ford done to solve this problem? Now, if you take these problem statements at face value, either Henry Ford could have solved the main problem that people were telling him to solve. We need faster horses. So, should Henry Ford have started a horse breeding farm and gotten the best horses from around the world and uh, gotten them at a cheap and affordable price to people? No. Should Henry Ford have built a horseshoe company to build better horseshoes, and perhaps horses could have run faster? No. Should Henry Ford have invested in better infrastructure and built better roads so that horses could run longer and faster and carry people in a more comfortable way? Good idea, but that's not what he did. Should Henry Ford have invested in building better horse carriages, more comfortable horse carriages which could be drawn by 8 horses or 16 horses and carry more people? No, this is again something that Henry Ford didn't invest in. A lot of people, by the way, invested in all these other businesses. There were people who were dealing with horse carriages. There were people who were building roads. There were people who were, changing horseshoes and building better horseshoes. And there were definitely people who were breeding horses. But Henry Ford did none of these. By spending more time in the problem space, Henry Ford essentially came back and said, the problem is not that horses are not efficient. The problem is that people want to get from point A to point B in a faster way, in a more comfortable way, right? And for that, I have to change the problem statement. I have to build something which can carry people long distance in a more comfortable way, in a faster way, and which is how cars happened, right? Now, this story could be completely made up, and that's fine. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that sometimes the problem statement is not what the problem statement states. It cannot be taken at face value. You have to dig deeper, and you have to have the ability to reframe the problem to the point where the problem becomes a very different problem, but a more exact, more precise problem. And then the solutions are easy. The thing that we do is that the moment a question is asked to us, a problem statement is put in front of us, we start coming up with answers without actually reframing the problem. And this is the essence of what I mean by saying that we have to spend time in the problem space as opposed to the solution space. Engineers do this all the time. The best coders in the world spend very little time coding. They spend most of their time thinking about what is the kind of algorithm they would apply to solve the problem. Exactly. So they spend a lot more time in the problem space than the solution space. So, having said this, this is the crux of my problem solving approach, which is spending time in the problem space. But now I'm going to define it. I'm going to give you a framework which I've used, which I use in real world while solving problems, while building the products that I've built, plus also what the approach that I use while giving interviews and the approach I look for in a lot of way when people take interviews with me. Start with why. Now, there's a very famous book. There's a very famous video. Simon Sinek sort of essentially sort of always start with why. He framed this beautiful sort of concentric circles with why in the middle, and then how and what on the in the outer circles. It's an approach which he said that all good leaders and all great organizations should focus at the core and start with the why. But surprisingly, this approach is an approach that all product managers and problem solvers should take. So essentially, we are talking about three concentric circles with why in the middle, then how, and then what. The thing is that when you jump to solutions, you are essentially jumping to how or what. How will we solve this problem, and what are the exact steps that we'll do to solve this problem? So if I asked you, hey, we have a product and our our day one retention is really, really terrible, how would you solve that? You immediately jump into how, which is the approach, the path that you'll take, and what, the specifics of the problem. You never actually dig deep enough and go, why does this problem exist? Why is D1 retention bad? Why does our product not work as it is currently? Why should we solve this problem? Why, as in we here, referring to the company, the organization that is solving this problem? And why would users care if we solve this problem? And that is what goes to the root of this problem solving system. When posed with a problem, answer two questions first. Why would users care? And why should you care about solving this problem? So, you here referring to both you as the product manager and somebody who's part of this organization. Why should the organization care about solving this problem? And why would users care if you solve this problem? This is at the root of everything we do as PMs. Then come to the how will we solve this problem, the approach that we can take. And of course, there could be many different approaches, right, to solving this problem. And then once you've decided the approach, then you answer what is the specifics? What are the specifics of the things that we'll do to solve this problem? So, why are we solving this? Why would users care? How will we solve this? What will we do to solve this? Now, if you actually think about it, this is very similar to strategy, tactics, and execution. And surprisingly, when you grow in your career as a product manager, you realize that when you start off, you are judged based on your ability to execute and execute fast. As you grow in your career, you're expected to come up with tactics of how you solve these problems, and you're expected to come up with better tactics, right? There is an approach which will take 2.5 months. There's an approach which can take 1 month. Both the approaches lead to the same result. Which one will you take? One approach leads to more tech debt right now. The other approach leads to lesser tech debt. But is it more important to get the product out fast or not? So as you grow in your career, your bottom layer is execution. Your next layer is tactics. But you look around and all the leaders in your organization are, or the best leaders around the world, the best leaders in the tech ecosystem are the ones who are also able to come up with a strategy, right? And in fact, if you work with really phenomenal leaders, you realize that they are good at all these three things. They can roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty and execute like nobody else. They're very good at tactical thinking, but most importantly, they are very good strategical. They're very good strategic thinkers, right? They are able to come up with a great strategy for why we should do what we are doing, how will we do tactics, and what will we do execution. So if you think about it, these circles are exactly the same. The why goes to the strategy. Why should we solve this problem? Strategy. Why would users care? Strategy. How will we solve the problem? The tactics. What will we do to solve these problems? The execution, the actual steps of the execution, and then actually executing it. Now, this is the approach. So, first, don't jump to solutions. Don't be in a hurry to come up with a lot of ideas. Spend a lot more time in the problem space and try and answer these questions. Why does this problem exist? Why would users care if we solve this problem? Why is it important for us to solve this problem? How will we go about solving it? And what will we do to solve this? So essentially, always come up with strategy, then tactics, and then execution. And the reason this is important is if you directly jump into what and how, You commit yourself to a solution which might not even be the right solution because the problem statement is not correct, and you found a solution to a very different problem. The thing is, in real life, execution and tactics are sunk cost. So when you're trying to solve problems, it is easy to recover from execution. You could have executed badly and you can course correct and execute well. You can also sometimes recover from bad tactics, right? So you started going down a particular path and realized, hey, this was the wrong path. You course correct, you come back and you start down on the other path. But pivoting on strategy is the most difficult thing. So until unless you get the why correct, you will not succeed as an organization, you will not succeed as an individual. This is true, by the way, of not just problem solving and product problem solving. This is very true about the way we think about our careers. Until unless your why is very strong and you've not answered, why should I take this job? Why should I take this role? How would I approach this role, and what will I do to succeed in this role? Now, you can always change your what and how. It's easy to pivot on them. You can always say, hey, sunk cost, I did a bunch of wrong things. Let me course correct and change. But but pivoting on why is incredibly difficult. Pivoting on strategy is incredibly difficult. And this is why you can see that a lot of companies that fail are companies that didn't fail because they were poor at execution or poor at tactics. In fact, a lot of companies are really, really good at execution and tactics. A lot of individuals are phenomenal at execution and tactics. But why companies fail and why individuals fail is because they come up with poor strategies. They did not spend enough time in the problem space. They did not really go to the core of the problem. They did not reframe the problem. So this framework has helped me a lot over the years. It's helped me a lot in thinking about product problems. It's helped me a lot in thinking about my career. This is something that I advise to all my friends, to PMs who've worked with me, that hey, don't be in a hurry to answer the question. Come up with the right strategy, dig deeper, answer the why first. So I hope this helped. This is it. It's a super simple and super effective framework, which is sort of the hallmark of a good and effective framework, right? That it should be simple to understand. Start with why, right? But offers so much depth and so much effectiveness that it's great for a lot of problem solving, but especially for product problem solving. So stay tuned. Hope you've been enjoying this channel. Subscribe to the channel, and yeah, check out more videos. And we'll be coming up with more playbooks soon. Take care. Bye.